Joshua Abraham Norton arrived in San Francisco in 1849. He came from South Africa. Before that, he was born in London, England in 1818. His family was Jewish, and they moved to South Africa when he was just 2 years old. He lived there for a long time, working with his father. But things didn't go well for him there. His father died. He also faced some personal losses, I think, and business troubles. So he looked for a new start, and that new start brought him to California. The gold rush was in full swing. San Francisco was a boomtown. People came from everywhere, hoping to get rich quick. Norton was one of them. He wasn't looking for gold directly, though. He saw other opportunities. He had inherited some money, maybe $40,000 from his father's estate. That was a lot of money back then. He decided to invest it. He was smart. He knew business. He bought real estate. He bought up properties in the growing city. He bought land. And the city was growing fast. So his investments did very well. He became a successful merchant too. He imported goods. He built a good reputation. People respected him. He was known as a shrewd businessman, but also a fair one. He was a proper citizen, really. He had a good name in San Francisco. He was well dressed. He was active in the community. He was doing great. He lived in a nice part of the city. And he had good connections. He seemed to have it all. But then things changed, and they changed quickly. This change, I think, was the turning point for him. It's what set him on a totally different path. It was all about rice. In 1852, there was a famine in China. This drove up the price of rice. San Francisco relied on imports for a lot of its food. So Norton saw an opportunity. He thought the price would keep going up. He planned to make a fortune. A ship called the Glide was coming from Peru. It was full of rice. Norton made a deal. He bought the entire cargo of rice for 12 cents a pound. That was a lot of rice. And it was a big risk. He was banking on the price continuing to rise. But another ship, or maybe several ships, also full of rice, arrived unexpectedly. They came into San Francisco Bay. They weren't expected. This flooded the market. Supply suddenly went way up. And demand, well, it didn't change that much, so the price of rice plummeted. It fell to 4 cents a pound. Norton was in a terrible position. He had paid 12 cents a pound. He couldn't sell it for a profit. He couldn't even sell it to get his money back. He was stuck. He tried to get out of the deal. He tried to claim the rice was not as agreed, I think, or that the contract had some issue. He took the sellers to court. He fought it for years. He went through several appeals. He went all the way to the California Supreme Court. But he lost. He lost every step of the way. The courts ruled against him. He was obligated to pay for the rice, and he was obligated to pay at the price he agreed to. This was a devastating blow, not just financially. I think it hit him very hard personally, too. He had put so much into it. He had risked so much, and he lost everything. His fortune was gone. All his investments, his properties, his good name, his savings, all gone. He went bankrupt in 1858. His nice house was gone. His social standing was gone. He lost everything that people measure success by. He was no longer a respected merchant. He was a failure in the eyes of many, and this must have been incredibly difficult for a man who had built himself up from nothing in a new country. He had been a man of means, a man of standing. Now he was a man of nothing. It's hard to imagine what that does to a person. The shame, the disappointment, the feeling of being stripped of everything. He was a proud man, I think. And this must have broken something inside him. He started to withdraw. He wasn't the same. He wasn't seen in the same places. He became a quieter figure, a man almost forgotten, or at least ignored by the people who had once courted him. His mind, it seems, began to process things differently. Maybe he looked at the world around him, the chaotic, fast-moving San Francisco, and saw a lack of order, a lack of justice. Maybe he felt the system had failed him, and maybe, just maybe, he thought he could do a better job. This loss, this complete downfall, was the fire that forged something entirely new. It created the space for a different kind of identity to emerge, a far grander and stranger identity. He needed a purpose, I think, and he found one. A truly unique purpose. His financial ruin and subsequent mental transformation happened over time. It wasn't an overnight switch. He spent some time out of the public eye. People might have wondered what happened to him. Where did the once prominent businessman go? He was still in the city, but he was no longer part of the mainstream. He was observing, thinking, perhaps planning in his own mind. He was letting go of his old life, consciously or unconsciously. He was shedding the skin of Joshua Norton, the failed speculator, and a new, much more powerful, and in his mind, much more important persona was forming. a persona that would bring him not wealth but a different kind of riches, a type of acceptance and fame that very few ever achieve. The city and the world had no idea what was coming, and it was a profound shift. From a man trying to make his fortune in the rough and tumble world of San Francisco business, to a man who, I think, decided that the real power wasn't in money at all. The real power he seemed to believe was in principle, in order, in a higher authority. And if nobody else was going to provide that authority, well, he would. He had nothing left to lose. And everything in his mind to gain. Not for himself, but for the people, for the city, for the nation. He was preparing for his grand declaration. The stage was set, in a way. The city was full of characters. It was a place where anything could happen, and it was about to. He would step out of obscurity, not as a businessman, but as something entirely different. Something unprecedented. The world would soon hear from him. So, Joshua Norton lost everything. His money, his reputation, he basically disappeared for a little while. And I think during that time, his mind went on a journey. He wasn't Joshua Norton Merchant anymore. He was something else. He saw the world differently. He saw the problems, and he had a solution, a really big solution. On August 17th, 1859, it happened. He showed up at the office of the San Francisco Bulletin newspaper. He had a piece of paper with him. It was a proclamation, and it wasn't just any proclamation, it was a declaration of himself. He declared himself the Emperor of the United States, not just a king, an emperor. He didn't ask permission, he just did it. He felt it was his duty. His right, even. The declaration was very formal, very serious, at least to him. It stated that he was doing this at the urgent request and desire of a large majority of the citizens of these United States. Now, I don't think anyone actually asked him to do this, but that's what he believed. Or maybe he just said it to make it sound official. He thought the government was in a mess. He thought there was corruption, discord, he saw the divisions in the country, the arguments between states, the lack of strong leadership. He was right about some of the chaos of the time, to be fair. So he stepped in, he felt he had to. He declared himself Emperor of these United States. And then, a few years later, in 1863, he added another title, Protector of Mexico. He thought Mexico also needed his protection, so he was Emperor Norton I, Protector of Mexico. He had a grand vision. He wasn't just thinking locally, he was thinking nationally, even internationally. His first official act as emperor was to dissolve the United States Congress. He declared it dissolved. He said it was full of fraud and corruption. He commanded all parties to assemble in Platt's Hall in San Francisco on February 1st, 1860, to fix the laws. Of course, no one actually showed up. The Congress in Washington kept doing its thing. But that didn't matter to Emperor Norton. In his mind, he had spoken, and his word was law. The newspapers got hold of this, and that's really important, because if the newspapers had just ignored him, he might have just been a man talking to himself. But they didn't ignore him. The San Francisco Bulletin printed his proclamation. And then other papers picked it up. They printed his decrees. They reported on him. At first, it was probably a bit of a joke, a novelty. San Francisco was a wild city full of characters. So a self-declared emperor fit right in a strange way. People found it amusing. They probably laughed, but it was a gentle kind of laughter, I think, not a cruel one. There was something about him. He wasn't raving, he wasn't aggressive, he was very dignified. He spoke well, he was always polite, he carried himself with an air of authority, even though he had no actual power. He started dressing the part too. He got himself a uniform. It wasn't always the same one, but it usually involved a blue uniform coat with brass buttons, epaulets, and a feathered beaver hat. He often carried a sword or a cane. He looked, well, imperial. He looked like an emperor should look, at least to him. And that look became iconic. It made him instantly recognizable. He didn't just declare himself emperor and then sit around. He took his role very seriously. He issued more decrees. He abolished Republican and Democratic parties. He thought they were tearing the country apart. He called for a bridge to be built across San Francisco Bay. He called for a tunnel. These were big, futuristic ideas for the time. He was thinking decades ahead. The city's reaction slowly changed too. From initial amusement, it grew into something else. Something unique. People started to accept him, not as a real emperor, of course, but as their emperor. San Francisco's emperor, he became part of the city's fabric. He became a beloved eccentric. He had no money, remember? He was bankrupt. So, how did he live? Well, the city supported him, restaurants gave him free meals, shopkeepers gave him discounts, or just let him have things. Theater owners kept a seat open for him. People gave him small amounts of money. He issued his own currency, small notes with his imperial seal on them, and shopkeepers would often accept them or keep them as souvenirs. It was a testament to how much people liked him. He had become a living legend, and I think his transformation wasn't just for show. It really did seem to be how he saw himself. He had lost his identity as a businessman. And in its place, he built an identity as a benevolent ruler, a man who cared about the people even if his means of showing it were unusual. He walked the streets, not as a madman, but as an inspector, as a leader. He was checking on his domain. He was making sure things were running right. In his mind, he was doing his job. And he did it very well. His existence proved something important about San Francisco, too. It showed the city's tolerance, its willingness to embrace the unusual, to celebrate individuality. He wasn't locked up, he wasn't ridiculed in a cruel way, he was incorporated into daily life. He became a fixture, and his decrees, even the silly ones, often contained a grain of truth or foresight. He pointed out problems that others ignored. He spoke up for justice. He spoke for progress. So, the declaration of Emperor Norton wasn't just a bizarre event, it was the beginning of a unique social experiment. A self-declared monarch accepted by a democratic society. It was a testament to the power of belief and the power of a community to create its own reality. He was no longer Joshua Norton, the failed merchant. He was Emperor Norton, and he had a city that loved him. The Emperor Norton's reign wasn't like any other. He didn't have an army. He didn't collect taxes by force. He didn't live in a palace, but he was an emperor in his own way and in the way San Francisco understood him. His reign was about presence, about decrees, and about a quiet, dignified performance that never broke character. Every day, the emperor walked the streets of San Francisco. This was his main job. He would inspect public buildings, check on the condition of the streets, and observe the citizens. He always wore his uniform. Sometimes it was a worn blue military coat with brass buttons. Other times it was a more elaborate outfit. He had epaulets, he had a feathered beaver hat. He carried a sword or a cane, sometimes both. He was a striking figure. You couldn't miss him. And he wasn't alone. He had companions, 2 stray dogs, Lazarus and Bummer. They were famous in their own right. Bummer was a mutt, a stray, who became a local celebrity for saving another dog, Lazarus, from drowning. Lazarus then adopted Bummer as his friend. These dogs would often follow the emperor on his rounds. They became part of his imperial retinue. People loved seeing them together. It added to his charm, I think. It made him even more approachable and endearing. He'd spend his days greeting people. They'd nod to him. Some would tip their hats. Children would wave. Tourists, once they learned who he was, would try to get a glimpse. He was a celebrity, and he took his role very seriously. If he saw something he didn't like, he'd make a note of it. Maybe he'd write a decree about it. His decrees were varied. Some were grand, like his calls for the dissolution of Congress. Or his plans for a League of Nations, an idea he proposed long before anyone else did. Decades before the actual League of Nations. He even called for a tunnel under the bay and a bridge. Both of these, of course, eventually happened. It's like he had a strange foresight. Other decrees were more local, more specific to San Francisco. He once decreed that anyone using the word Frisco to refer to the city should be fined $25. He thought it was disrespectful, and many San Franciscans actually agreed with him on that. He commanded city officials to remove obstructions from the sidewalks. He ordered streetcar companies to provide better service. He banned people from killing ducks in certain parts of the city. He was like a walking ombudsman, a concerned citizen with a very, very grand title. He didn't sign his decrees with just his name. He signed them Norton I, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico. He truly believed in his titles. And the newspapers, especially the Daily Alta California and the San Francisco Bulletin, printed these decrees. Yes, they treated them like actual news. They didn't just mock him, they gave him a platform. And this, I think, was key to his continued existence as emperor. The media played along. They validated his role in their own unique way. Life for Emperor Norton wasn't lavish. He was still a poor man in terms of material wealth. He often lived in a small rented room, sometimes in a cheap hotel. But he never wanted for food or shelter. Restaurants considered it an honor to serve him. They'd give him meals for free, or at a very low price. Sometimes he'd be given a small allowance by the city, or by wealthy citizens who enjoyed his presence. People often gave him small sums of money on the street, which he would accept with dignity. These small contributions allowed him to live. He even issued his own currency. These were paper notes, usually $1, sometimes $5 or $10. They bore his imperial seal and signature, and people would accept them, not because they were legal tender, of course, but because they valued him. They'd keep his notes as souvenirs. They were a piece of history, a unique token from their emperor. His effect on the city went beyond just amusement. He was a symbol. In a city that was often rough and chaotic, he represented something stable, something kind, something principled. He often intervened in small disputes on the street, and people listened to him. He was a moral compass, in a strange way. People looked up to him, or at least respected the role he played. For example, there's a famous story about an anti-Chinese riot brewing in the city. Tensions were high. A mob was forming. Emperor Norton reportedly stepped between the mob and the Chinese residents, recited the Lord's Prayer, and shamed the rioters into dispersing. Whether this story is entirely true or embellished, it shows the kind of respect he commanded. He represented a voice of reason, of peace. He was seen as a protector, living up to his title. He held court in coffee houses and restaurants. People would come to him with their problems or just to talk. And he was approachable, he listened, and he always maintained his imperial bearing. He never broke character. He was always the emperor. This consistency, I think, was part of his appeal. He gave the city a sense of continuity, a sense of shared experience. His presence was a daily reminder of San Francisco's unique spirit. Its willingness to embrace the unconventional, its capacity for kindness and humor. He wasn't just a quirky figure, he was a reflection of the city itself. He showed that San Francisco had a heart and a sense of fun. His reign, though entirely symbolic, was powerful in its own way. It shaped the identity of a young, growing city. And he became inseparable from that identity. His imperial presence defined a distinct era in San Francisco's history. He was truly the emperor of the people. San Francisco's embrace of Emperor Norton was a truly unique thing. It wasn't just polite tolerance, it was affection, genuine respect, and a deep-seated acceptance. And I think it says a lot about the city itself. San Francisco in the mid-19th century was a place of extremes. It was wild, diverse, and often chaotic. It was full of people from all over the world, all looking for something. Gold, opportunity, a new life. In such a place, a self-declared emperor wasn't as out of place as he might seem elsewhere. The city was young. It was still forming its identity. It didn't have a long history of tradition or established norms, not in the way older cities did. So it had room for unconventional figures. Emperor Norton, in his military uniform and feathered hat, walking the streets with his dogs, fit right into this vibrant, sometimes eccentric landscape. He added to the city's character. He made it even more interesting. He provided a touch of whimsy. Life could be hard in San Francisco. There was crime, poverty, uncertainty. People worked hard. They faced many challenges. Having a benevolent, if imaginary, emperor brought a bit of lightness to life. He was a shared joke, but a kind one. A shared secret, in a way. Everyone knew he wasn't a real emperor with actual power. But everyone also understood that he was their emperor. And he was harmless. That's a big part of it. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't demand anything that wasn't freely given. He was polite, dignified, and seemed to genuinely care about the city. His power of a collective was the power of a collective fantasy, a shared agreement that this man, this particular eccentric, was special. His decrees, as I mentioned before, often pointed out real issues. When he called for a bridge across the bay, it was a massive visionary idea, but it was also a practical one. The city needed better transportation. When he dissolved political parties, he was speaking to the very real frustrations people had with corruption and partisan bickering. He was like a mirror, reflecting the city's aspirations and its problems, but through an imperial, slightly skewed lens. The media played a huge role in solidifying his position. Newspapers like the San Francisco Bulletin and the Daily Alta California didn't just print his initial declaration. They continued to report his decrees, they wrote about his daily life, they turned him into a legend, day by day. They didn't mock him cruelly, they treated him with a certain respect, a sort of knowing wink. They understood that he was important to the city's spirit, they made him a household name. And because of this widespread reporting, people across the country and even internationally heard about the Emperor of San Francisco. He became a tourist attraction. Visitors to San Francisco would look for him, they'd buy postcards with his image, they'd hope to see him on his daily rounds. He was as much a part of the city's identity as its hills and its bay. Sometimes famous people would pass through San Francisco. Mark Twain lived in the city for a while and likely saw Norton. Some speculate that Norton might have inspired characters in his works. Robert Louis Stevenson, another famous writer, also wrote about Norton, admiring his self-possession and the city's embrace of him. These literary connections further cemented his place in history. The police, too, played their part. There's a well-known story about a new police officer who arrested Norton, thinking he was just a crazy vagrant. The citizens were outraged. The police chief himself ordered Norton's immediate release and issued a formal apology to the emperor. He also made sure all officers understood that the emperor was to be respected and left alone. This incident, I think, perfectly illustrates how deeply he was woven into the city's fabric. The city wouldn't tolerate any disrespect towards him. He lived simply. He didn't amass wealth. He didn't seek personal gain from his imperial status beyond the means to survive. He lived in cheap lodging, ate simple meals. His dignity came not from his possessions, but from his unwavering belief in his role. He was a man without a kingdom, but with an entire city as his loyal subjects. The city's embrace of Norton was an act of collective imagination. It was a choice to participate in a shared reality, one where a benevolent, self-appointed emperor could exist and even thrive. It showed a capacity for human kindness, a willingness to protect and provide for someone who was different, someone who had fallen on hard times. It was a humane response to someone who might otherwise have been marginalized or institutionalized. He represented the best of San Francisco's spirit, its openness, its humor, its independent nature, and its deep sense of community. He wasn't just a curiosity, he was a beloved fixture, a symbol of a city that dared to be different. A city that didn't take itself too seriously, but deeply valued its unique characters. He was their emperor, and they protected him, supported him, and loved him until his very last day. Emperor Norton's reign ended on January 8, 1880. He collapsed on a street corner near California Street on his way to a lecture at the Academy of Sciences. He died shortly after. He was 61 years old. The immediate cause was a stroke. The city's reaction to his death was profound. It wasn't just a passing notice, it was a moment of deep sadness and collective mourning. The next day, the San Francisco Chronicle published his obituary with the headline, "Le Roi est mort, the king is dead." It acknowledged his passing as a significant event for the city. His funeral was enormous. Thousands of people came. Reports say 10,000 or even 30,000 people lined the streets. The procession stretched for miles. All classes of society were there, rich and poor, businessmen and laborers, city officials and ordinary citizens. They came to pay their respects to their emperor. It was a testament to how truly beloved he was. He was buried in the Masonic cemetery in a simple, unmarked pauper's grave, but the city didn't forget him. Years later, in 1934, his remains were reinterred. He was moved to Woodlawn Cemetery, which is a major cemetery in San Mateo County, just south of San Francisco. And this time, he got a proper headstone, a grand one. It reads, "Norton I, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico." It's a permanent marker of his unique place in history. His memory didn't just fade after his death. It lived on. He became a legend. His story was passed down through generations. He inspired writers and artists. Mark Twain, as I mentioned, lived in San Francisco during Norton's time. While there's no direct proof, many believe Norton influenced some of Twain's eccentric characters, like the King and Huckleberry Finn. Robert Louis Stevenson, who lived in San Francisco in the late 1870s, wrote about Norton, calling him a gentle, patient, kind old man. He found Norton fascinating. Even later, his story continued to captivate. He's been the subject of books, plays, comics, and even an opera. There are historical societies dedicated to keeping his memory alive. People still talk about him. His decrees are often quoted. His visionary ideas, like the bridges, are remembered. His impact on San Francisco's identity is undeniable. He became part of the city's spirit. He represents San Francisco's unique blend of eccentricity, tolerance, and a forward-thinking attitude. He showed that the city had a big heart, a willingness to embrace those who were different. He embodies the idea that San Francisco is a place where you can be whoever you want to be, even an emperor, and be loved for it. His decrees, even the ones that seemed absurd, often contained a kind of wisdom. His call for a League of Nations, an organization for global peace, decades before the actual League of Nations, is quite remarkable. His insistence on building a bridge across San Francisco Bay, which was considered an impossible feat at the time, eventually became a reality with the construction of the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge. It's like his imperial vision, though born of personal tragedy, somehow tapped into the future needs of the city and the world. More than just a madman or a colorful character, he was a symbol of kindness. He was a symbol of a community's capacity for compassion. He was a symbol of a city that valued its unique individuals. He never hurt anyone. He never caused trouble. He simply existed, in his own grand way, and enriched the lives of those around him. The story of Emperor Norton is also a reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the resilience of the human spirit. He lost everything, suffered a mental breakdown, but instead of succumbing to despair, he created a new reality for himself. And that reality, embraced by an entire city, became a powerful, positive force. His legacy isn't about power or conquest. It's about how a single, unassuming man, through sheer force of will and a unique vision, could capture the heart of a city and leave an indelible mark on its history. He was a self-declared emperor, yes, but he was truly crowned by the people's affection. And that, I think, is a far more powerful and lasting legacy than any real emperor could ever hope for. He remains a cherished part of San Francisco's identity, a testament to its enduring spirit of individuality and acceptance.